Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Welcome, my dear learner, to our lesson today. We're going to have a lesson in history and government. We are continuing with Form 3 history, the first topic, which is European invasion of Africa and the process of colonization. And we are looking at how the Africans, we are studying how the Africans reacted to the process of colonization after the European powers came and got territories. How did the Africans respond? So we have discussed the Maji rebellion. We have also discussed the Mandinka rebellion. Now we are going to look at the Dembele resistance. So when you talk of the Dembele resistance, is a resistance that happened against the British. It was the Mandebele people, right? Mandebele people, Ndebele, and the Mashona, right? It was actually before the Mashona. It was the Mandebele people fighting against the British. So these happened in southern Rhodesia. Rhodesia, which today we know as or is referred to as Zimbabwe. So this is a revolt by the Mandebele people, right? They were fighting against, or they revolted, they resisted the British rule during that time. The British had already occupied South Africa. They were controlling much of South Africa, and they wanted to expand their territory to include the southern Rhodesia, which today we refer to as Zimbabwe. So during this happened during the reign of this man who is known as Lobengula, right? Who was the son of Mzilikazi. That was his father, right? We know that Africans want to refer themselves or are identified with their family. So this resistance happened during the reign of this man or this king who was known as Lobengula, who was the son of Mzili Kazi. So by 1870, the British who were in South Africa tried to get concessions or permits or permission to go and hunt. They wanted to get hunting concessions, right? These are agreements. They wanted to make agreements with Lobengula to allow them to have to take about hunting and mining, right? That was hunting and mining. So they wanted to be allowed to hunt and mine in the land of the Lobengula. But Lobengula delayed in allowing them. He took a lot of time to allow them to take or to come and hunt. Remember, a concession is an agreement. You allow, it's an allowance. So they were asking Lobengula to allow them to mine and to hunt in his land, but Lobengula delayed. He delayed in allowing them. So in 1888, the British, who are led by somebody who is known as Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes, who was at that time the British High Commissioner in South Africa. He was the British High Commissioner. who was the British High Commissioner, decided or encouraged the British government to try and engage Lobengula through Moffat to allow them to take control of the southern Rhodesia, because it was very important and it was very rich. It had you could be able to mine, and they wanted to take control. So they sent, or through his encouragement of the British government, they sent J.S. Moffat. They sent J.S. Moffat to go and try and get agreements or covenants with Lobengula, make treaties and agreements to allow them occupy portions or to occupy land in southern Rhodesia. But these could not, things were not moving as fast as they desired. But they also got somebody else. They also got somebody else to join in. They also got somebody else to join in, who was Charles Rood. So he also joined in to help and get concessions or to get permission. Remember, Lobengula has constantly refused or delayed the process of allowing them to occupy the land. So the British resorted to sending more agents or more people to negotiate on their behalf. And in October 1889, this man, Charles Rood, was able to make a concession together with Lobengula, which became to be known as the Rood Concession. Finally, Lobengula gave in to their desires. He gave in to the desires of the British and allowed them, or made a concession, right? This gave them a firm grip, or encouraged the British to further come into this land. So there was now an increase after this concession, the Rood concession. There was an influx of white people. There was movement of white people from the south, and we had a group, the first group, which was known as the Pioneer Column, right? Pioneer Column. The Pioneer Column. So they came, and this was the whites who are living at the Transvaal region in South Africa. And I'm sure you have looked at, or you have met this Transvaal region. It was very rich in gold, right? So they started to advance further north. So the Pioneer Column was a group of 200 white settlers, 200 white settlers who moved, and actually they started to move in 1890. I want you to remember that year. They started to move in 1890 towards the Dembele land, or the Matebele land. So they were trying to get a place to settle in. So these 200 settlers came in and occupied the land of the Matebele people. So these brought about conflicts. So the occupation brought conflicts with the people, because when the white settlers come, their interest, and remember they have been given permission by the Rood Convention, which allowed them to have a monopoly. So this convention brought a monopoly of the British. So the British have a right, or from the concession that Lobengula had made with the British, it gave them a right, or it gave them, encouraged them to come and settle. So these 200 settlers came and got farms or settled in the Matebele land. So it resulted to conflicts among them, or among the Africans, or the Dembele and the British, because now the white settlers, and they are organized. Actually, they had a company that was referred to as the British South African, the British South African Company. So these organized, or it gave them the protection they needed to occupy these lands. So in October 1893, in October 1893, war broke between the Dembele people, led by their leader, who was Lobengula, against the British. How did it broke? When the British settled in this land, they employed servants. They employed servants from the Shona, from among the Shona. So these people, these are neighbors of the Dembele people. So when they settled, the British got servants from this community. So, but when in October 1893, some of the generals, or some of the warriors of the Dembele, killed these servants. So there was killing of the servants. There was killing of the servants by the Dembele people. So when the Britons, or the British, saw that their servants have been killed, or the Dembele have fought, or have come and killed the servants, it became a full-blown war. And as a result, the Dembele people were fighting alongside or against the British, who are now supported by the Shona, because most of the servants that were killed were the Shona. So the war broke out, and they fought against one another. But the Lobengula, who was the leader of the Madembele, could not march. He was no match to the British and their force, because just south, in South Africa, the British had reinforcement. So Lobengula could not be able to fight or sustain a war against the British. So as a result, Lobengula decided to move. Lobengula decided to move further north to run away from the war, because the war had broken out. Most of his warriors were being killed. They could not fight against the British, because the British were getting reinforcement from South Africa. So when he moved further north, he died the next year in 1894, where he died. So after his death, the generals who took his place, the next year after him, the generals after him surrendered. The generals who took after him surrendered to the British. So these effectively brought that resistance to a standstill, which happened in 1894. So the war took a very short time, because Lobengula did not have a detailed army to fight with. So he was quickly defeated. So when he saw that he was just about to be defeated, he fled. He moved further north, where the British could not, or did not have a hold of him, where a year later he died, and that demoralized the people or brought the war to an end, because the generals, right? Actually, the generals, it's the generals or the leaders who took over after him decided to surrender to the British. So that is how the resistance took place in a nutshell, in a simplified form. I'm sure, my dear learner, you are able to, if you are able to access your KLB books, you are able to get more information of how the war took place. Now, let us look at the causes, or what were the causes of this war. What encouraged or what fueled the Madembele people to fight against the British? So let us look at the causes of the resistance. The causes of the resistance. So, my dear learner, as we look at the causes of the resistance, the first one is loss of land. When the British came to occupy their land, they came with the settlers. The settlers were farmers. They wanted to get a land where they could farm. They wanted to get a place where they could invest. So they had to take their land away. Their land was alienated. So this made the Matebele people very angry, and they had to rise and fight against the British. And then the second cause, the British involvement. The British involvement with the Shona. Was another cause for the resistance. When the British settled in the land, they employed the neighbors who were rivals of the Dembele people. So these angered or brought resentment among the Dembele people. They did not want to see the British working together with their neighbors, right? So that encouraged them to fight against the resistance, against the British. And then the killing. Another cause was the killing of the Mashona. The killing of the Mashona servants. So when the servants who were working for the British were killed, the community, Shona, rose up to fight, or it encouraged the British to fight or revenge on their behalf. So the British came to fight against the Dembele because their warriors had executed the Mashona servants. And why did the Dembele execute the Mashona servants? They were trying to reiterate or trying to send a message against the British that we do not want you. You are not welcome in our land. And then another reason why they fought was the forced labor. Forced labor. The Dembele people were forced to work in the settler farms. We talked of white settlers. These settlers were farmers. So the Dembele people were forced to come and give their labor. They were forced to come and take charge of these farms, especially when they were in the highlands. They were also forced to work in the mines as casual laborers. So they did not want to give their labor because the compensation they were getting, they were not being paid well, or they were being forced. It was not out of their own will. They were being forced to work in those farms or in those plantations, or they were also being forced to work in the mines. And then lastly, my dear learner, the British occupation of the Mashonaland was another the British occupation of the Mashonaland was another reason why the Dembele resisted. They did not want foreigners. The British were foreigners in that land. So the Dembele rose up to fight. They rose up to stand for their rights. They did not want, they saw as the British as invaders. That is their home. And then another person has come to attack them. So they saw as if their region was being interfered with. So those are some of the reasons, or some of the causes for the resistance of the Dembele against the British. So, my dear learner, as we conclude our lesson today, we have looked at how the war took place, or how the resistance progressed. And I said it was the Madembele going against the British. It happened in southern Rhodesia, which today we know as Zimbabwe, and the Madembele were led by Lobengula. And I've explained in detail how the war, or the circumstances leading to the war, and I said the war was brought to an end when Lobengula ran to the north and he died at that place. And then the generals who took over him could not sustain the fight, and therefore they had to surrender. So as we end our lesson, my dear learner, I want you to attempt this question. I want you to attempt this question, which is number 1, outline the reasons why the Dembele resisted the British rule. The question is, my dear learner, outline the reasons why the Dembele resisted the British rule. And I'm sure you are able to discuss that in detail, because we have just been discussing that in our today's lesson. And therefore, with that, my dear learner, we have come to the end of our history lesson for today. I wish you a very nice time. Bye-bye.